Okay.
Yes.
So I am very pleased today to introduce a couple of colleagues of mine who have been working on a really interesting program at Washburn this semester, which of course was, like so many things, somewhat interrupted and changed by the crisis. But we're going to hear from them today about the Inside Out program, which is a national program that my colleagues instituted at Washburn this semester. So our guests today are Carrie Wynn, who is a professor of history and also a director, the director of the honors program at Washburn University. Carrie teaches and conducts research in U.S. history with a focus on turn of the 20th century, Indigenous history, and women's and gender studies. Also with us today from Washburn is Emily Grant, who's an associate professor at Washburn's School of Law since 2011. Emily teaches legal writing, trusts and estates, and is now also offering the Inside Out Prison Exchange Program course for Washburn undergraduate students. So I will turn the microphone over to them, and they'll tell us all about the program.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone, for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity. Carrie, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words before I sort of launch into some background information, or?
Sure, just a little bit, because Emily's going to tell you all about the class. She's the one who's the instructor. She's the one who brought the program to Washburn. We met, I think, for the first time last summer because I'm the director of the honors program. Emily came to me and she said, I have this awesome course. I want to teach it at Washburn. How can we make this happen? And so we spent the last year working really hard on bringing this model to Washburn. And I want to say that it's been a really big collaboration, and we'll talk more about that. But this has been, it's not only an honors course, but a sociology course at Washburn. And it's been supported by dozens of donors who helped to make it possible. So I just want to begin by saying this has been a real community effort that has been really rewarding to see. But then I'll let Emily tell you more about the actual program.
Of course, thank you. And when Carrie says, I showed up at her door and then we made it happen, what she means is she did all of the legwork and ran around all of the campus offices and found all of the paperwork and all of the donors. So she has really spearheaded this. But the Inside Out program generally was founded about 20 years ago by a professor at Temple University in Pennsylvania. And she started it, she was teaching crim justice classes at the time, and she started the program as a way to facilitate dialogue between her college students, her undergrad students, and inmates in prison. And it was a semester-long course. It has now become a national and even international program. Over 1,000 college professors have taken the training to offer this class. I looked at the website this weekend and it said they had over 38,000 alumni, students, inside and outside students who had taken this class. The training is a really intense week-long training where you learn about the pedagogy of this program. I did the training a couple of years ago and was super excited to try to bring the program here to Washburn. So a little bit about the logistics. I have 12 Washburn undergrad students, and we used to go every Wednesday night to the Topeka Correctional Facility. And we had class, a college level crim justice class with 12 residents, 12 women at the Topeka Correctional Facility. So there are inside students, and then the Washburn students are the outside students. And we met together. Well, we would have met for the full semester, but every Wednesday we met together. The substance of the course, it's a basic crim justice course. So we talked about the purpose of punishment, theories of crime, victims and victimization, restorative justice, discrimination in the criminal justice system. So a wide variety of topics. But what the magic of the class isn't the content that we're covering, and it's far from me and my brilliance, but it's just the opportunity to create space for this kind of dialogue. I think the tagline for the program is something like breaking down barriers, or the breaking down the walls that divide us. And that really is what the class is about. Topeka Correctional Facility is a women's prison, federal prison. There are 800 or 900 women who live there. When I put out the call for the class, I interviewed, I think, 50 women from Topeka Correctional Facility, and then I selected 12 to participate in the program. So they were very interested, very supportive of the program. And so those 12, and then the 12 Washburn students make up the class. Over the course of the semester, we read 4 books together. The New Jim Crow, which is a pretty mainstream, came out maybe 5 years ago, book about the racial discrimination inherent in the criminal justice system. We read a book called No Safe Haven. And No Safe Haven was maybe 20 years old, but a sociologist interviewed residents, inmates at a women's facility in North Carolina. And then she wrote this book about their experiences, about how it affects their family, about what it's like living inside, about work opportunities, all kinds of things. And I liked that book because it is about a women's facility, and we have class in a women's facility. And I also kind of like that it's 20 years old, because we go into it thinking, well, surely things are so different now. It's much better now. And then we get really depressed by the end when we're like, ooh, nope, it's about the same as it was 20 years ago. We read a book called The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. And it is about income inequality in the criminal justice system, and how those who are most affected by the criminal justice system are often those on the lower end of the economic scale, and people, corporate executives who commit crimes, often don't have the same outcome. And then the last book we read is called Restorative Justice. No, that's not its full title. It is the Little Book of Restorative Justice for People in Prison. It is specifically about the restorative justice process as it could apply to people who are incarcerated. So those are the 4 books that we read. Our time together, our class time, it was 2.5 hours every Wednesday night in the prison. And it was mostly a whole lot of group work. It was very, very little of me standing at the front of the room talking. A lot of group work, a lot of icebreakers. So we started the semester, we had at least 1 or 2, those hokey get to know you games. Are you a dog person? Are you a cat person? Stand on different sides, like those kinds of games, which it turns out is essential in this particular class environment, when it's different from your other college classes and your classmates seem like they're a whole lot different than you are. And it's pretty essential to start this semester disabusing everyone of that notion that we have a lot more in common than I thought we would. And but for some luck and some interesting choices, I might be there as well. So a lot of icebreakers, a lot of small group work. I put people in groups of 4 and have them discuss something, some partner work, and then report back to the big group, that kind of discussion. It really is a very discussion-based class. Each week, all of the students write a reflection paper, 3 pages, 4 pages, about the class time and about the readings, how our class discussion tied into the readings, things that were interesting from the readings that stuck out to them. And then they do a final paper at the end, and then a group project, and I'll come back to the group project in a minute. So that's the logistics of the class, but man, it is a really cold and sterile way of describing what really is a very dynamic, I keep saying it's magical, and it really is. It's just such a great experience for everyone in the room. So for the inside students, this is not the first time, I don't want to sound like I'm the savior here, but this is one of the rare times for them that they are treated like equals right now at this period in their life. So in the class, we all sit in a circle. and we alternate inside, outside students. I'm a part of the circle, so I'm not like looming at the front of the room teaching. We're all in a circle. We use first names, even for me, in the classroom, and that's pretty unheard of. At TCF, everyone, they all go by last names. They're all referred to by their last names, and we go by first names, and that is, it was striking for some of the women. Like, really? I get to call you by your first name? I'm like, sure. My name is Emily, and these are our classmates. It is often for the inside students unusual at this period in their life for their opinion to be respected and valued and heard. And I get a lot of comments in the reflection papers about how amazing it felt that they could express an opinion. And so, about some of the topics, the inside students know far more than the outside students about some of the things we're talking about. So they really, I think, appreciate the environment of a college classroom where we're all on equal footing. It's just a college classroom that happens to meet inside a prison. For the outside students, a similar kind of, I guess, magic, if I could just keep using that word, they get a new perspective on a lot of things. I have several, at least one or two, who are interested in law enforcement. And this is a really interesting experience for them to get to know, to get to like and respect some people who are in prison. And we sort of have stereotypes about the bad people who are in prison. And it turns out we met 12 of them and we actually really like them. And they're smart and they're interesting and they have interesting thoughts and they write papers just like I do. So I think that's a really powerful time for the outside students to meet people we might otherwise think less of and to like them, to be impressed by them, to respect them. That is a lesson I think that goes forward in a lot of ways. One week of the class, the outside students took a tour of TCF, and then that night at class, we talked about the myths and reality of prison life, what society thinks prison looks like, what it actually looks like, what it looks like at TCF, and how that is different from other experiences. So that was a really good opportunity, although it felt, I think that's week 7 of the semester. And by then we are solidly a class, like we are one class. And so it felt weird, certainly for the outside students, to be like on a field trip to see where their classmates live. But that was I don't know if any of you have taken a tour at Topeka Correctional Facility. There's a maximum security side and segregation cells. And then the minimum side where our class is looks very, very much like a college campus. There's a big open quad and there's dorm rooms. And for the most part, at the right times of day, people can just go from the kitchen, from the dining hall to their room and back. So it looks very much like a college classroom on that side. When we were taking the tour guides, I don't know who they normally give tours to, or I don't know who their target audience is for some of their messaging, but they talked about, how, they've worked there for 10 or 15 years, and, some of the women are good people who just made bad decisions, but some of them are just bad people and they're manipulative and they will never tell you the truth. And I could see and feel, I could see in my students and feel in myself this defensiveness rising up. Like we almost wanted to say, hey, stop that. Those are our classmates. We really like them. And I don't know who you're talking about, but stop being mean to our friends. So that was an interesting shift. And it really just took, that was week 7. By week 7 of the class, we already were feeling protective, I guess, of our classmates. So let me spend a couple of minutes talking about COVID-19 and how that has dramatically impacted our class. So up until spring break, hunky-dory. Since then, I have been meeting via Zoom with the outside students. So every Wednesday night, I and the 12 outside students get together. We're actually down to 11 outside students. One of them, his National Guard unit, got called up for active duty to help with COVID-19 relief. So I'm down to 11 outside students. But we've been meeting via Zoom regularly. we're still writing papers, still reading the books. One of the interesting benefits, I guess, of the switch to Zoom is that it's really easy to invite guests. So we had one of the authors of one of our books join us and talk a little bit about the book. We had the founder of Inside Out, actually. She joined us one evening and talked a little bit about the history of the class. And then we had one week where we talked specifically about COVID-19 and how it impacts prisons and jails. And we had a public defender, I couldn't think of the initials really fast enough, a public defender from the Philadelphia area join us to talk about what they're doing for their clients and asking for release from prison in light of COVID-19 and those kinds of things. So that's been an interesting benefit that I don't normally get with this class, is that we could have people Zoom in. The inside students, I was hopeful we would be able to Zoom with them, and that has not happened. So right after we went to the shift to online classes, I printed and photocopied a huge pile of readings and handouts and discussion questions, and I dropped it off at the prison, and they have been continuing to meet as they are able every Wednesday night, as many of them who can get there. And I can't tell you, I'm trading emails with a couple of them just sort of to keep tabs and make sure everybody's okay and see if they have any questions. And I get so weepy every time I hear we had another meeting, they found us a different classroom. So I've just been so impressed at the inside students and their determination. In the email exchanges, they say things like, thanks for not forgetting about us in here. We're doing our best. We're trying really hard. So they have been sending papers in through my liaison. They send them to her and she scans them to me. So they've been doing the best they can, and I've been really, really impressed. I've been really impressed with them. So also, as I guess with respect to COVID-19 and as it relates to the class, the outside students, we're all pretty worried about our classmates inside. As of Friday, which was the last day the DOC reported numbers, TCF had 3 staff members and 2 residents who had tested positive, which is way, way better than Lansing, which has over 300 staff and residents, and 2 deaths at Lansing from COVID-19. So it's better than that, but I can't imagine how difficult it is to contain. You can't socially isolate in prison. You just can't. So we're pretty worried about the health and safety of our classmates, but so far everyone is reported healthy. And again, they're continuing to meet and work through the discussion questions. My hope is that once all of this is over, once TCF and the state of Kansas opens back up, that we can go in for one last big class meeting just to see our classmates again and have a graduation ceremony and sort of wrap up the semester as best we can together. The last thing I wanted to mention, or that I wanted to talk about, are the small group projects. So at the end of this semester, toward the end of the semester, in a normal semester when we're all still together, I divide the class into small groups, a mix of inside and outside students, and they come up with some proposal for reform. It's the kind of things where, as we're going through the semester, whenever someone says, why don't we do that differently? And I say, write that down. That's a great group topic. Let's talk about that. So by the end of the semester, we have a lot of those topics. And I have the students get together in groups of 4-ish, 4 or 5, and come up with a proposal, relying on the reading that we did, relying on our class discussion, sometimes relying on the inside students and their own experiences with various aspects of the criminal justice system to come up with a proposal to do something different. And the proposals can be little. They can be TCF focused, like we'd like an art therapy class at TCF. Here's the research about how art helps people in their mental health, helps them generally in these ways. Here are some logistics. Here's how you might pay for it. Here's who might teach it, those kinds of things. And they can be big. I had one group one time who wanted to propose a specific training for all federal correctional officers. or one group who looked at the foster care to prison pipeline and wanted to implement some programming in the foster care system. This year, I don't have the inside groups. They are, I think the last email I heard from them, there's a group of 6 that wanted to work together on a project, and they were still working on some ideas. But my outside students, they have 3 projects that they're working on, 3 group proposals that they're going to create. And they all stemmed from conversations in class. Things the inside students had said about their own experiences, and the outside students were a little bit outraged and decided that we needed to fix this. So one of the issues is the plea bargaining system in general. Some of our inside classmates had stories about feeling pressured to take a plea, or having some pressure from people, or some choice, or some trumped up charges so they could plead to something else. And they felt really boxed in by the plea bargaining system. And so I have one group who's looking into the plea bargaining system. And again, with Zoom, we just had a Zoom call where I got one of the Kansas state appellate defenders to come and talk to them about the plea bargaining system, about the incentives for all of the parties involved, some suggestions for reform. So I have a group working on that. I have one group who is working on pay rates at TCF for the women who do work. So women who work in the facility, grounds crew or the cleaning crew, make anywhere from $9 to $15 a month, maybe up to $21 a month. And out of that, they have to pay $1 rent to the state, and they pay co-pays for healthcare. And there was two of our inside students took a coding class that TCF just recently offered. And so it was a really hard semester-long class where they learned certain coding procedures. And now they're eligible to get like an actual coding job, where again, they will make 60 cents an hour maybe, which is way more than anyone else in the prison, but still pretty ridiculous. And so I have a group looking into that. Like, what can we do about the pay rates for the work that the women are doing in prison? And then the last group is working on, so at TCF, when you first arrive at TCF as a soon-to-be resident, one of the first places, their intake place, one of the first things you'll do is take a questionnaire. And it asks some mental health related questions, but the prison only uses it to decide what's your risk of reoffending. And they use this questionnaire to sort of set your offense level, and that helps determine eventually whether you'll end up in minimum or medium or maximum. But the women in the class said, what actually would have been helpful is if they used that questionnaire to get me the mental health help that I need. So one woman in our class had, as part of her charges, a sex offense charge. And so she had a separate questionnaire. And in that questionnaire, she revealed that she had been abused as a child. And the prison evaluated the questionnaire solely for the purpose of deciding how likely she was to reoffend. Is she a risk that we need to put in a different level of security? And she said to the class, what I wanted them to do is set me up with a therapist so I could talk about some of these things, and not just so that they could check the box that I probably wouldn't reoffend. So I have a group that's looking into that process. So those are the group projects for this semester. I'm really excited. Our final class is next week via Zoom. Usually we have a very lovely sort of big full class graduation ceremony. I bring cupcakes into the prison. We all get t-shirts. And again, I'm hopeful that we can do that later this summer whenever we can all get together again, because I've been really proud of how both halves of the class have persevered. And it's been really, everybody's very resilient. And I think we knew that going into this, but it's been very nice to see that. So there was a question in the chat that